get blue.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started with tonight's meeting. We have Pastor Tommy Pearson here with Instep Church to give us the invocation, and then Mike Klinghammer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for the opportunity for us to gather here on this evening. Lord, we thank you for your many blessings that you have bestowed upon each and every one of us, along with your mercies that are new each and every morning. Thank you for your love for us, often in spite of us. Lord, you have brought this body together to govern your people, and I pray that you will grant them wisdom to make decisions that will benefit the masses. From these chambers, O God, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. The agenda has been set for us this evening, and we commit our time to you and ask that you will bless us and that our work tonight will be pleasing in your sight and be a benefit to the people of St. Charles County. It is in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Elam. Councilmember Dave Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Hollander.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Klinghammer.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Here.
Okay, now we'll move to public comments. We allow 3 minutes per speaker and 3 speakers per subject, pro, and 3 speakers con. You can talk about anything on the agenda or any county business or anything you'd like to talk to the county council. First speaker, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, B.C. Enoch, County resident, and public audience. On tonight's agenda is resolution number 4 for your consideration. I'm highly opposed to it, and it's approving a resolution endorsing MoDOT's plan for a 2x2x2 indexing. This would raise state fuel taxes without a vote of the people by 2 cents per gallon for 3 consecutive years, beginning this year, next year, and the following year. Then this will tie the future tax to the consumer price index in relation with inflation. Number 1, this will stymie the county and our community growth. 2, this will limit economic development. And 3, this will divert discretionary dollars available to each and every St. Charles County resident. This anticipated tax would generate $165 million for MoDOT and about $71 million for cities and counties. So I would hope that there isn't an underlying capricious decision-making on county council in this effort. I'm saying no to taxation without a vote of us, no to forcing mandates on all Missourians. Tell MoDOT to learn to restructure and live within their current revenue streams and budget. They need to live like the rest of St. Charles County residents. If you look at their website, they purport a statewide transportation improvement plan for state fiscal years 2015 through 2019. So they already have a plan in base with funding already intact. On the internet, there's various reports and various calls from MoDOT employees that, in my opinion, are crying on the shoulder of the voters without presenting the full facts and the full truth to the voting public. One particular article talks about on the road, tough to be the bearer of bad news. This is, again, baiting the voter when people are calling in concerns and repairs to MoDOT's information or consumer centers throughout the state. I'm asking the County Council to vote no on Resolution 15.04, voting down of new taxes and ensuring that MoDOT lives within its means of revenue and budget like all St. Charles County residents do on a daily basis. This just is not fair for our elected officials in our county to ask for a tax increase without a vote of the people. And I'm opposed to the Senate bill now before the Senate. And I ask the county council to overwhelmingly defeat this resolution in support of the 2x2 index. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments on the resolution? Okay, is there any other comments on the other issues?
Mr. Chairman, I think there's someone here to speak
He's gonna speak,
later.
yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, closes public comments. Steve, your oral report for county executive?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have an oral report, but Chief Todd, I believe, wants to introduce our new public information officer.
Good evening, council members and members of the public. I'd like to introduce Val Joyner, who has joined the police department as a public affairs officer. So she's going to try to keep us on the straight and narrow and keep us connected with the public. Val Joyner. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Yes, Joe, I'd like to remove the 2 bids from the Highway Department.
Second.
Second, all those in favor of removing that, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Any other items to be removed? Seeing none, is there a motion to?
Motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Mike?
Yeah, and I didn't pull this off to talk about the companies that wanted it by any means. They're both fine companies. The concern that I had was we're awarding contracts that total over $1 million, and we had 2 bids on the concrete one and only 1 bid on the asphalt street reconstruction over on Ipswich. The administrative staff did a fine job. They gave us all the information. They showed the contracts and everything. My concern, though, is the very limited number of bidders that we have. And I guess Steve and Joanne, I'd ask if you guys would look into it and see if there's a way that we could encourage more bidders, or check and see if there's a problem with, from the perspective of the contractors. Are they looking at it as it's hard to do work for the county? Do we require more paperwork than normal? I don't know, but it just seems like when we're awarding over $1 million worth of work that, and it's not highly technical work. There's an awful lot of concrete companies out there. There's a lot of asphalt companies that are qualified to do this. It's more of a curiosity at this point of why we're not getting people to respond to our bids. I don't know if I don't know how we're advertising it. Do we send it directly to companies that are that do this type of work, or what's really going on it? I know, we've got we got several asphalt companies in St. Charles County, and only 1 responded to the bid for a nice piece of work.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, is that a question to?
Yeah, it was
I'd
a
like to
question
respond.
and also get back with more information later if you don't have it
Yeah.
now.
Red flags went up for us too when we saw the single bid. The reason we went ahead and sent it forward is we were able to compare it to last year. I mean, I think the same person had done the first part. And let's just get Craig up here and see if he can answer those questions for you now, because I'm a little bit, I'm concerned if there's something we can do to get more people to bid on these things, or if it's just
Yeah, this is
the
kind of a
nature
new
of
thing for us also. We've always been very lucky and successful in getting people interested to bid. We have not had a dialogue with anybody to confirm any of this, but my speculation is that probably these construction companies, well, first of all, if they're busy and they have more work than they can do, they typically don't bid because they know they won't be able to fulfill their obligations. My guess is that when the recession hit, a lot of these companies scaled down, cut crews, cut equipment, and now that the economy's picking back up again, they're busy, but they maybe don't have the capacity that they used to have. They're probably being a little bit cautious about hiring, buying more equipment, and those kind of things. So their ability to do larger volumes of work it may be a little bit limited right now. Again, I haven't spoken with anybody about that, but I think that may be an issue here. You know, our paperwork requirements are similar to every other public agency out there. I don't think we do enforce our specifications. We do ask for quality work, but we don't hammer these guys more than any other agency. We've never gotten that feedback from contractors before on that kind of thing. So I don't know if it's just the timing of this. Everybody had just gotten some work. I do know, in response to one question, I talked to the finance department. They did send these advertisements out specifically to at least 12 companies, and I'm thinking more like 16 companies.
Okay.
So it wasn't a case of people not being aware of it. And again, we didn't get people calling in saying, hey, you know, we'd like to do this, but we don't want to work for you guys because of this or anything like that. We just didn't get the responses. And again, I have to assume that maybe it was just capacity. They didn't have the room to fit it into their schedule for this year.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that we went directly to some companies. I was hoping that, you know, I know we used to do a lot of advertising in the newspapers and whatnot, and that seems to be a technology or way of disseminating information that's starting to go away more. But if we're directly contacting companies.
Yeah, we do the newspaper, we do the website, and we contact people directly. We also send the plans to plan rooms. There's companies out there that compile projects from all different companies, and these contractors know to go to these plan rooms when they're looking for work. They typically get a set of our plans also. So I think the word is out there, and we were very surprised when we did just get the limited number of bids this time.
Okay. And again, I appreciate all the background information on, especially on the one that we only got one bid on. I never like when we have sole bidders, but I think I'm going to vote for it. I don't have a problem with that. You've definitely shown that the price is competitive compared to years past. I don't think that we're overpaying for it. I was just concerned about the limited number of respondents.
Yeah, I agree, and we would not have brought it forward if we didn't think the prices were reasonable.
Okay.
If we thought it was, just somebody throwing in a highball number just to get, hoping they got the work, we wouldn't have brought it forward.
Okay. I'm glad to see that asphalt is coming down, and I know it's got a lot of petroleum product in it, so low oil prices help us on that respect as well.
Yeah, and we should actually, we've got a clause in our contracts that if the asphalt prices drop, there's a formula that gets passed back to us in the form of savings. The contractor still, comes out, equal, but we actually get a savings because he's paying less for the asphalt. Now, the same thing is true if the price, would skyrocket. We would have to pay a little bit more, but the contractor's profit stays the same. He doesn't make any more because of that.
Great. Thank you.
And Councilman, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Joe. Or Joe, go ahead.
First. I was just going to add that at any time, if you have somebody inquire of you about how they get on the vendor list, all they have to do is contact the finance department, and they're happy to put them on vendor lists for various types of things, even if we don't have a bid right now. Then they'll send them that email when that item is bid.
And it's easier than that. They can actually go on our website in the finance
Forgot
department
about
under
that.
open bids, and you can actually register yourself for the type of bids that you want to be able to receive. And we have various categories. So if you want to do construction work like concrete, you can sign up to get those bids. But if you don't want to get something related to a service type issue, then you don't get those. So
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Yes, company like Millstone Weber, okay, is this too small a work for those guys?
Unless they're very low on work, or they've got just a pocket of time that they think they could do it,
Okay.
I would say yes, it's probably too small. You may know they got our Deer Creek Drive project,
Yeah.
which is a $5 million project, which is more what they're interested in
Bigger
doing.
stuff.
They've got the equipment, the staff, and the bonding capacity to do that kind of work.
Do you have like a list of county construction companies or companies that have a presence in this county that you automatically send out for this kind of stuff?
Well, we don't, but I think the finance department does. The
Does.
purchasing department takes care of the
Okay.
advertisements and things. And I know Kurt Manderick in the department told me he could give me a list of who all received these bids. At the time, I didn't ask him for the specific list, although he you know, I did ask him how many people got it, and he said 12 to 14, something like
Okay.
that.
Because Millstone Bangert's facility's in my district, and I know a lot of those guys, and they say work's real slow, and I'm gonna say, well, then you guys need to bid on these smaller jobs, okay? And keep the money in the county.
I
okay?
think, you know, I don't want to speak for them, but I think their overhead is so high that the profit margins on these things just isn't there for them. But again, it kind of depends on how hungry they are for work. I think.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Sure.
Motion for approval of the Highway Department 2 bids.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It has been approved. Moving on to resolution number 15-03.
Resolution 15-03, sponsored by Mike Elam. A resolution commemorating the 100th year of remembrance of the Armenian Genocide of 1915. Whereas the present year, 2015, marks the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the infamous episode known as the Armenian Genocide, and whereas that historic event, which was launched on April 24th, 1915, and continued through 1923, resulted in the annihilation at the hands of the Ottoman Turkish government of 1.5 million Armenians and the deportation of almost the entire Armenian population from its ancestral lands in Asia Minor. And whereas the Armenian Genocide marked the first instance of genocide, the attempted mass extermination of an entire people conducted as a policy of state in the 20th century. And whereas the methods employed by the Ottoman Turkish government, the arrest and execution of leaders and intellectuals, forced death marches, rape and enslavement, and the incitement of ethnic and religious hatred against a minority population would become models for subsequent genocides under Nazism and communism in Cambodia, Bosnia, Rwanda, and Darfur. And whereas despite the lessons of the past, the horrors of genocide continue to plague the present day. And whereas despite copious documentation, scholarly consensus, and official recognition by national governments across the world, the Armenian Genocide is still actively denied by the present-day Republic of Turkey. And whereas many survivors of the Armenian Genocide found safe haven in the United States, settling in such locales as St. Charles County, where their descendants continue to play a vital, productive role in community life. Now therefore be resolved by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1, that Friday, April 24, 2015 will be designated as Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day in the County of St. Charles in the state of Missouri. Section 2, that we honor the memory of those who perished in the Armenian Genocide 1 century ago and remember all those who lost their lives and loved ones to genocide in the succeeding 100 years in the hope that by doing so we will contribute to ridding the world of the scourge of genocide once and for all.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none.
A resolution commemorating the 100th year of remembrance of the Armenian Genocide of 1915. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Resolution has passed. Moving on to resolution 15-04.
Resolution 15-04, sponsored by Joe Cronin, Mike Elam, Dave Hammond, Terry Hollander, Mike Klinghammer, and John White. A resolution supporting the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission with the 2+2+2 indexing initiative. Whereas transportation affects almost every aspect of the lives of Missouri residents and is a key to our community's prosperity. Whereas the state of Missouri is facing problems with transportation funding that will only get worse unless something is done in the very near future. And whereas according to the chair of the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission, one option is to increase the fuel taxes by 2 cents per gallon for the next 3 years and then protect the rate against inflation by tying it to the Consumer Price Index. Whereas this initiative is commonly referred to as 2+2+2 indexing and is the most feasible plan and quickest way to solve the most urgent transportation funding problems in Missouri. And whereas Missouri State cities and counties stand to benefit from any funding increase and would evenly split an additional $71 million in new fuel tax revenues each year. Whereas the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission and St. Charles County have cooperated effectively in advances in transportation that benefit the county and the state. Whereas the St. Charles County seeks to support the Commission's effort to secure the financial means required to sustain the development and maintenance of Missouri's transportation infrastructure. Now therefore be it resolved by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the St. Charles County Council hereby supports the proposal of the chair of the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission was to implement the funding plan known as 2+2+2 plus indexing. Section 2, the executive assistant to the county council is hereby directed to forward a copy of this resolution to the chair of the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission.
Mr. Shell, would you like to make some comments or explain to us a little bit what this is 2+2+2?
Yes, thank you first for inviting me today, especially Councilman Cronin, for the invitation. MoDOT and St. Charles County have had some great success in recent past. If you look, a few months ago, we opened Page 3, which connects a lot of St. Charles County. It was opened on time and on budget. Blanchette Bridge, a year ago, we blew up a bridge and replaced it within 1 year. Other states, that's almost unheard of to do something like that in that short of a time. Again, that project was on time and on budget. It was really key to St. Charles City because if you remember, we opened it right before the big event on downtown St. Charles. Page 2 was a combination, the section ERA funds and a cost share with St. Charles County. I live personally in Weldon Spring, and I recall driving here tonight, I remember my son went to Academy of the Sacred Heart, how long it took to go from one end of the county to the other, all the way down to Academy of the Sacred Heart. And I left Weldon Spring, and I got here, I think it took me 15 minutes. So, some of these projects have greatly improved the access and people's ability within the county to move around. The Boone Bridge project, we're replacing a 1930s bridge that is on its last legs. If you go across the span today, you'll see the deck is soon to be poured out. This summertime, we'll have another connection between St. Louis and St. Charles County. We have other very critical projects, shoulders for safety, groups in more rural St. Charles County, where the addition of a 2-foot shoulder makes a huge difference if you look at the number of fatalities, disabling injuries on some of our roads. Very small improvements. They can cost between $500,000 to $10 million, depending on how long that is. Again, we've partnered with St. Charles County. The state as a whole has reduced fatalities in the state of Missouri from 1,200 to 700 a year. So if you think of that, how many Missouri citizens have been saved from very simple safety improvements? Moving forward, though, we have a huge problem, and we have some really tough choices to make. We have insufficient revenue, and I'll cover some of the reasons why that happened. The last tax increase was 23 years ago in the state of Missouri. And since that time, we have a 17-cent state and 18-cent federal gas tax. If you go back 23 years ago, think of how much everything cost you, how much bread cost, how much concrete cost, how much asphalt cost, how much cars cost. So we have had the same revenue tax per gallon, so it's not a tax per dollar, it's a tax per gallon. And in the last 23 years too, the fuel economy has really improved. So cars 23 years ago got 15, 18 miles a gallon. Today, if you go to a dealership in St. Charles County, it's 28, 30, 35 miles per gallon. So we have a conflict of increasing prices, which is in every market, and a decreasing revenue stream. So, our funding stream has been dramatically impacted. We've had injections of money through ERA, the stimulus projects. We've bonded on Amendment 3 when we got back revenue that was going to other states. So we've had increases in the funding, which has pumped up the program, and the program is what we use to build transportation projects. So in the last few years, it's gone to about $1.2 billion. That was what it took to deliver these major river crossings, the projects that I'm talking about. Today, we're at $700 million. Next summertime, so about a little over 12 months from now, next summertime, we will be at $325 million total for the state of Missouri. The state of Missouri, how big is our system? We have 33,000 miles of highway, 10,000 bridges, over 10,000 bridges. So when you divide 325 million among that amount of mileage and those number of bridges, and we have the most major river crossings of any state because of the topography, and we are at the crossroads of the rivers, we have a huge issue. What has MoDOT done in the past? This cliff that we're at today, we've been talking about for the last 5-6 years. It is nothing new. We saw it coming. And yes, we are living within our means. Some of the things we've done, we've laid off, we haven't done this through attrition, we've laid off 1,200 employees. We've closed 135 buildings across the state. We've gone from 10 districts to 7 districts, reducing 3 districts. We've sold 740 large pieces of equipment. We continue in St. Charles County. We have numerous buildings here that we've either given away, sold, to other agencies that still sit vacant. So all across the region, we've done this to live within the means. We've taken all of those funds and put it right into the program. I think we're the only state agency who's done that and self-imposed that to live within the means. Currently, because of this, the Highway Commission has come up with a plan to live within our means of $325 million. To do that, the choice was either to spread $325 million across all of those roads, or the Highway Commission chose to keep the most heavily traveled roads that connect the state, which is called the primary system. They are highways that connect every part of the state. They're typically all of the interstates and many of the more major roads. Those are 8,000 miles. So we will keep and continue to invest in those corridors. But the remaining 26,000 miles, the Highway Commission no longer has funds to invest in. We will continue to do limited routine maintenance with MoDOT's reduced crews. But if you play out the numbers, it's really daunting. Today, in fact, a bridge on I-70 in Kansas City had to close, one of the major interstate bridges. Bridges, when you have 10,000 of them, it is almost like a used car. Something is always happening. They're deteriorating all the time. So again, those major interstate bridges, we will continue to fix and repair. But when that happens on one of these supplementary roads, we try to fix it with our crews or we close it. We currently have a bridge in the district closed. It's a 19-mile detour for the people in that area in Franklin County. So moving ahead, what we've done, we do have a plan to live within the means of $325 million. But what does that mean to the St. Louisans, to the St. Charles people of Missouri? When you go next summertime and pay at the pump, you will be paying to fund transportation jobs in other states. Next summertime, $167 million will go to other states because we simply don't have the state revenue to match. So it's a pretty good deal. 20%, you get 80%. For $1, you get $4. These are not funds from Washington that come to us. It's money that people in Missouri pay in the pump. 2 years from now, it's $400 million that people in Missouri will pay into the pump, and that will go to fund transportation projects in other states. So that's the huge issue. So currently, it is really not MoDOT's position or our job to figure out how to fund transportation. It's the legislatures. There are currently measures in Jeff City, Senate Bill 540, was a 2+2+2 plus indexing. That would not build big projects like I-70 across the state. It would not build huge corridors like I-270 North or more major projects. It would allow the state to maintain all of our roads at the levels that you've seen and have become expected to. When I go to a lot of soccer tournaments, and when I get to the hotel in other states, the people, and many of them St. Charles citizens, tell me as soon as you leave Missouri, it's ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Those states, we are actually 46th in funding. Those states all get 3, 4, 5 times the revenue per mile. So we think we do an incredible job for the money that we have. We have a great workforce, everything else. And we have a big issue, though. And the issue is, St. Charles County is a perfect example. If you pull out the last U.S. Census, 91% of the people took a road to go to their work. 4.5% worked at home. 1.5% took public transportation. 1% walked. 91% drive to work. So it's a huge issue in the state of Missouri. How do we solve that? The state of Missouri is, again, very happy to partner with St. Charles County. I've talked about some of the successes. We would like to see continued successes. Some of the stuff St. Charles County would like to do, and we would love to do, is I-70 study. It's a lifeline economic corridor of the entire state and the region. We have Route N, St. Charles County, a developing area. You have safety projects. There's still a lot of projects, a lot of roads that we are missing. 2 foot of asphalt, which makes the difference between life and death for a lot of people. So I could entertain questions if you have any questions.
Anybody got any questions? I got some questions, but anybody else have any questions? I got a question.
Sure.
I don't know if you can answer this or Harold, but how do you get around the Hancock Amendment on this and not put this to a vote?
Apparently, this falls within the Hancock Amendment. That level, I'm not an attorney or expert, but the 2 cents falls within the amount of increased revenue. Because again, as I mentioned, the gas tax was never indexed. So as the price of everything else went up, our gas tax stayed the same place. So it's within the legislature. They can't approve something like that.
Is that,
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, Steve, yeah.
Can I try to answer that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think what he said was true, but a little more detail. This idea that taxes have to be voted on is based upon the Hancock Amendment, which was passed in the 80s. And basically what it did allow some growth in the state budget. But if you raise taxes beyond what they called the Hancock lid, if you wanted to raise taxes beyond the Hancock lid, then you had to go ask the people to approve it. If you are beneath the Hancock lid, then the legislature can go ahead and approve these. If the legislature is wrong and the 2 + 2 + 2 ends up tripping the Hancock lid, then the state has to refund the revenue above that limit, and it has to refund it based upon your income tax liability. So there's no way that they can go above that lid and keep the money. The only question is, do they want to go ahead and pass this 2 + 2 + 2 to make sure, and I agree with everything that's been said, but the most important issue is pulling down these federal funds. If we don't have money to access the federal funds, and what is it? It's a 4-to-1, isn't it?
Correct.
It's a 4-to-1 match. Like I said, it's the same thing that we've talked about before in here many times. If we don't pull down those funds, they won't put them in the bank and save them until we can afford to access them. They'll go ahead and they'll go somewhere else. And given the history here in St. Charles County, given the fact that roads and bridges are such an important part of our continued growth and success, if we don't do anything, we might as well sell our scissors, because we're not going to be doing any major ribbon cuttings for a while. And I don't think anybody wants that. I went ahead and supported a resolution similar to this down at East-West Gateway. I voted for the last tax increase 17 years ago. I think it was the last tax increase I voted for. But, and even then, you remember, the no tax pledge? They had the no tax pledge even back then, 17 years ago. And every year I took the no tax pledge, but I put an asterisk at the bottom and said, however, I can't promise you I won't vote for a user fee, because roads are so important to my district. And you can call it a tax, you can call it a user fee. It's not the kind of redistributive tax that a lot of people very much resent and hate and want to vote on. This is basically a user fee, not designed to give them more money, but to give them somewhere close to the amount of revenue you thought you'd have 10, 15 years ago by now, and do not have because of these efficiency of vehicles. And obviously, I hope I at least answered the questions with regard to the Hancock Amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and the next question is I have with public entities, this brochure that you put out, MoDOT,
Correct.
How do you put out brochures that are supporting a tax increase, or isn't that, like, since it's no election, is that what makes this, I mean, isn't that another, I mean, I'm just asking some questions, because I'm not saying that you don't need the money, but I don't know if I agree, it shouldn't go to the vote of the people, it bothers me a little bit, and the 2 + 2 by 2, it seems like it's a sneaky way to get around, so it doesn't have to go to a vote, and I know you have nothing to do with this, it's the legislators, I'm just giving my perspective on it.
I mean, again, my role and the highway department role, and like I said, it's not our job to figure out how to fund it.
No, I understand
But
that.
it is our job to tell you the consequence of where you're at and what the impact will be. So that's what I've tried to do tonight. You know, the Senate Bill 540 is from a senator, and there were changes today, and I can kind of go over that. There was a substitute bill for only 2 cents. And the 2 cents would basically be able to cover a federal fund for 1 additional year, and then in 2018, you would run out of funds again. So you would, it extends it if you only had 2 cents. So I did my own
Yeah,
math on
and that,
this.
may I inquire? That bill got rid of the indexing, too, is my understanding.
It's only 2
So
cents.
it's still, I think the plan is still do 2-2-2, but just do it 1 year at a time. Do it 1 year, do it the next, which is going to be a lot tougher.
I think it's only 2 from what the information I have. But it's, again, it's in, all of those bills
Yeah.
are in
So,
process.
so make sure I understand, that the people who are, Mr. Cronin, he would have to amend this resolution to adapt to how the legislator has rewritten or substituted the bill?
I know there's a substitute bill that was filed today. Again, none of them have been approved, so it's still all in transition.
Good, Joe.
I think it's important to understand that this isn't a fix. This is a Band-Aid to keep from losing federal money. Okay?
This does not build the big projects. This, again, matches federal funds.
Right.
And I talk about the cost because, when I talk 325 million, I had to do my own math on this. If you have a car that you drive 12,000 miles a year, which is the standard, you get 25 miles a gallon, which is probably a little lower. In 3 years, if you had 2 + 2 + 2, it would cost you a gallon of milk a month. It's about $3. So it's not, if you put it in terms, a year, it's about $36 a year for one car driver.
And the big thing too is that 2 cents preserves the federal money coming in, which is 167 million this coming year, and it'll escalate to 400,000 a year. It would be kind of like something we could really relate to. It'd be like, as aldermen, it'd be like St. Peter's or O'Fallon or Wentzville. They're citizens contributing to the Transportation Improvement Fund, but then the city's not having that 20% match to get funding for a project within their town. So if we don't, MoDOT doesn't come up with the money for the match, all the people in this state are going to be paying federal fuels tax, and that's going to go to other states that have the money to get the matching funds. No different than would be if, for instance, O'Fallon didn't have the money for the 20% match for a county road project. That money would go to Wentzville or St. Peter's or St. Charles. So it's just basically a way to keep things from getting worse and keeping our federal tax money in place. And in my district, and Joe, even in your district, MoDOT projects that shoulder for safety, saving lives in your district. The Highway P interchange at Piney Road and Highway 61, I think it was 13 people got killed in the last 5 years at that intersection. And luckily, Mr. Bamer secured funding for that before the financial crisis came about. But these projects save lives. So we're not just, I know we're all talking about dollars here, but I mean, there's people that, if MoDOT gets the 2 cents and we get the federal money, projects are going to happen that are going to save people's lives in this community and in this state, and I think that's very important. So I don't like paying more, two pennies more at the pump than anybody, but I just drove through a good part of Iowa and Illinois, and we got way cheaper fuel than anybody else around here anyway. And,
Iowa just passed the 10-cent increase, and they were already way ahead of us before.
So the idea is just to keep our head above water with this.
I got the 2 + 2, when you say that, not you, but when it's said that it's only 2 cents, that's on top of the 20 cents from the schools, the whatever the county is, whatever the fire district. I mean, they just add up and up, and I think it just keeps going. But what I want to understand is, you've been doing all these projects. We put shoulders out there, which we're very thankful of, and MoDOT does do a good job. There's no criticism there, okay? So we've been doing all these projects for years, the Page extension and et cetera, et cetera. So is that funding all gone now?
Well, you know, it actually came up, you know, when you do a transportation plan, and this is a key point, we don't fund and plan today what we're going to do tomorrow. We do it 3 years out, 5 years out. And it takes that long to go through, first the planning studies, the environmental, to get projects, shovel-ready was a term like during the era. It takes a long time. So at East-West Gateway, we actually work with East-West Gateway Board. They determine what the long-range plan is. It's hard to explain in the region today because we're building Boone, we're building all these projects. Those funds were programmed 3 years ago, and we're using up the funds now. The funding shortfall is 18 months from now. But at that point, that's when it gets to the, you know, then you can't do these things, and there is an appetite to do these projects.
But where's the funding? My question is, if you're projecting out every 3 years, well, you projected those projects 3 years ago.
Right.
So
we knew
what-
this cliff was going to be here 5 years ago.
But what's happened, my question is what's happened to the funding? Where has it gone? Because in Missouri, the population isn't decreasing.
Sure.
So-
Some of it, again, some of the big projects you saw was ERA stimulus projects. That's page 2 is what I call that down in Mid-Rivers. Page, we had a series of projects through St. Louis region. That bumped it up. We have done cost share projects that leverages. So we take a chunk of money, we leverage with St. Charles County, and that bumps up the program. Some of the projects we bonded. 17% of MoDOT's budget was bonded. It's lower than most states if you go to Illinois and stuff like that. We bonded for the Mississippi River Bridge. For 800, we have a lot of deficient bridges. We had Safe and Sound. We replaced 800 bridges in 3 years. That was complete like a year ago. That was through bonding. So that 1.2 billion, you know, was in part pump up federal funds, cost share funds, and bonding. The 325 is our base program minus the bond payments, and that's it.
Mr. Chairman, can I address your question? Because you were talking about adding this and that and the schools and whatever. This is not what you're referring to is additions to the sales tax, okay? And this is not an addition to the sales tax. When you add something to the sales tax, and you have a sales tax, if the price of a loaf of bread doubles, the tax doubles. This is a per gallon fee on a gallon of gasoline. And even if the cost of a gallon of gasoline triples, the fee remains the same. And that's the problem here is while people have been eating more and more bread, they've been using less and less gasoline because the cars are more efficient. So there was an expectation that revenue was going to rise like this, but because of these things, the revenue leveled off and I assume is even decreasing now. So we're not talking about giving them more money. Well, we're giving them more money than they're going to get, but nowhere near what they would have expected 10, 15 years ago, you know, before you had these improvements. Do I have that correct, Bill?
You know, if you look at the federal, for decades, the gas tax funded the federal trust fund and the state, and it was always in the black. And it's because of the fuel efficiency, electric cars, all kinds of improved efficiencies. VMT from 2008 till last year went down. Vehicle miles traveled, it went down slightly. It's actually back up now. So there are more people traveling. It has more to do with the efficiency. So these the stimulus was not gas tax money. It was injections of general revenue that helped offset it. So on the federal side, you see the same issue. You can't fund transportation with a gas tax because the math doesn't work out with efficiency.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just have two other things. This similar proposal was passed by the St. Charles County Chamber of Commerce just recently. And also Donna, this may be just a typo, but besides the chair of Missouri Highways and Transportation, we'd wanted this also to go to the legislative body for St. Charles, that represents St.
Okay.
Charles County.
Okay.
So I don't know if we need to make a amendment to it, or what's the official
I would say
ordinance
make an
is.
amendment to add
Okay,
that.
so we want to make an amendment to add our elected officials. I'm sorry, we have two versions of this, and the first version is what's on the, screen. But essentially, we want to get this to Senator Dempsey and Senator Onder and the other state representatives, so they understand this is important to us and our citizens. And I've talked to quite a few civic groups about this, and most people, given the choice of 2 cents a gallon when they fill up their car, having the roads go to heck and no new roads in our road projects in our county, they're pretty happy with the 2 cents a gallon. I've talked to hundreds of people literally about this, and not heard one person complain about it. So I hope you get it done with the legislature, and I hope you keep doing a fine job on our roads, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Oh, John, Mr., you got a question?
No, just a comment. Personally, I can attest that, through the years, I've bought less gasoline just through more efficient cars. And we're very lucky in this community because we don't have toll roads like so many other communities. So other communities are paying a lot more than this to drive on their highways, and we're getting a pretty cheap deal here in Missouri.
Okay, Donna?
We need to make the amendment.
Or do you want to make an amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment that the last sentence of this resolution be changed to, the executive assistants to the county council is hereby directed to forward a copy of this resolution to the chair of the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission and the elected Missouri legislative delegation of St. Charles County.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, Donna or Carol?
A resolution supporting the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission with a 2+2+2+ indexing initiative. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
No.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Resolution 1504 is passed. Moving on to the first bill for introduction.
Bill number 4209, requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by Joe Cronin. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A agricultural district 5-acre minimum lot size to RR single family residential district 3-acre minimum lot size as per application RZ 1500002.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4209?
I have a comment here. Thank you, the Hanner family, for coming out here, but this is the Hanner family, and they've lived out in that area for many generations. And Mr. Hanner wants to give his son some ground to build a house on his property. So I've known these folks for a lot of years. I'm sorry I had to go to these meetings, but I support this. I think you guys are fine neighbors, and I hope you don't mind coming down here one more time. We'll get this over with, okay?
They don't really even need to come down here, though, because...
Yeah, I didn't call you to
Yeah.
come down, because this is the first reading. We'll finish at the next meeting. I don't think there's any controversy. Planning and zoning was okay with everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Cronin. Moving on to Bill 4210.
Bill number 4210, requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 15-000001 for a lawn care service to Christopher Hefner and H&K Services LLC.
Are the applicants here? You want to come up for a minute, sir? And then while you're walking up here, Dave, everything was good? Planning and zoning was good with this?
Yes, planning and zoning recommended approval 9-0.
Okay, sir, did you check in, you read your conditions, what some of your conditions are on here?
Yes, I talked to Jan Whipple about them.
Okay, on number 2, section 2, it says stormwater treatment for any future development on the site shall be required for the purpose of collecting, storing, and filtering storm runoff. Did you look into doing that? Did you see what that entails?
She said basically anything that in the future we'd have to do that. We don't plan on doing anything, but if we do have the property to do that.
Okay, so I got a question for Robert.
Yes.
Okay, so is this gentleman going to be required to do a stormwater engineering in order to have his nursery on his property?
It's, my understanding it's a lawn care service, and it's all indoors, all storage will be indoors. There won't be any outside storage. So really, the exterior of the property is not going to change at all. In fact, the vehicles for the employees will be parked indoors, the way I understand it. So since there won't be any sort of changes to the exterior of the property, I don't really see a stormwater plan required.
Well, then why wouldn't we just strike this from the bill? Why is it in there?
I think it's to include any small or miscellaneous changes that might be done outdoors. We try to provide a little bit of wiggle room so that if the plans of the applicant changes, they don't have to come back here if it's in substantial conformity to.
But so you're saying if, let's say he wants to build he's got 24 acres, he's got plenty of ground out there, he's going to have a 9,200 square foot, that building's existing, so he wants to add his business successful, so he wants to build a 1,200 or whatever, 1,500 square foot outbuilding, he'd have to do this stormwater study, right? According to this ordinance.
An expansion of the building, we would ask for some stormwater information, yes.
Okay, I'm going to request that this number 2 be stricken from this bill, because do you know how much one of those cost? Do you?
No, I don't know personally.
Well, first of all, they're nearly impossible to get, and they take months, and they cost thousands of dollars. You're putting a huge burden on a small business owner, and I don't understand why that would be in there, because it limits the ability for him to expand his business, because this would be about a $10,000 engineering study, and at the end of the day, he's got 24 acres of agriculture, and he's going to have to do some bureaucratic government study. So I'm going to request that that's be stricken. We can do a substitute bill if that's okay with the applicant. If there's a reason why I can't do that, I don't know why I can't.
What kind of study are you talking about? I don't see the study on here. I'm seeing where you would have to contain it, but.
If he's, from what I understand, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the gentleman goes through, everything goes through with this, and he wants to expand, this number 2 is going to require, if he expands anything outside the footprint of the existing footprint, he would have to do one of these engineer stormwater studies, right?
It depends on how much ground is disturbed technically, and I don't remember the breakdown between, or the break point at which the square footage that's disturbed.
But is it left to the office of discretion, or is it put in here in an equation where it's understood?
There's already ordinances that we have enacted currently that are aside from the site plan approval process that establish what the break point is for whether it's a major stormwater or minor stormwater plan.
So if there's this, pardon.
No, Mike's next. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I guess I'm still confused why this is in there. I mean, if he's going to, we'll use the example of adding a 1,500 square foot building for your tractors or whatever you need to use there. Would that require a stormwater treatment? It's not really a study. It's just saying that it has to have.
But in order to get to the point of what the ordinance says, you have to have an engineer study.
To know that it's recorded, whatever you're doing has that much. I don't understand it. Why isn't, I mean, if it's necessary, why don't we see that language in every one of these conditional uses that come forward? Or is this something we're going to see on every one now?
Well, we do typically include it with conditional use permits. It's pretty standard language. In fact, probably that exact wording is used for many or most conditional use permits. And it's a way for the applicant to be aware of the stormwater requirements.
Okay, also, forget that this was in there. If he decided to build a 2,000 square foot barn, would he be required to do that study as part of getting a building permit to construct a barn?
To construct a barn, if it's a commercial site plan, if it triggers certain requirements for like X number of square feet, then yes, there's a stormwater plan that's required to apart from the site plan.
Okay, you do realize you kind of talked in circles there. Would he have to do 2,000 square foot barn on a 24 acre site? Do you need it or do you not need it?
Aside from the conditional use permit, is that your question? Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like you need it regardless if it's in here or not.
It should be, no, it should be stricken, it should be stricken from this ordinance because what it does, it puts an undue burden onto the property owner for expanding his business.
What they're saying though is if he gets a building permit, he's going to be required to have one anyway.
I don't know where our ordinance says that. I guess we got to re-examine that as well.
Okay.
I've built commercial buildings before, and it's common, you have to have a stormwater detention plan when you build the building, okay?
This is a conditional use. This is not commercial zoning. This is an agricultural, 24 acres in the middle of a farm field. If he did a study on this lot, it would cost him over $10,000 and take months to build a little building. It's just way too much government.
I
It's
understand.
not needed in here.
I understand that, but I guess where do you draw the line? How big a lot before you have to do that? And maybe that's a question for Dave, but I can tell you, like in O'Fallon, when you build, they determine how much flow's coming off your property, and you either have to put stormwater detention or you have to contribute to a stormwater detention fund. I mean, but now that's commercial. Is this property zoned ag or commercial?
It's ag.
It's ag, okay.
But perhaps some of the ordinances need to be reviewed within those, because they get passed in the stack of UDOs.
If it's, is it required to do, for a stormwater study in an agricultural area to a detention study to build something?
We have, following the mandates of federal government and then down to state government requires St. Charles County to abide by a clean water permit. And that clean water permit is a big document, and it says we're going to do X, Y, and Z in order to ensure that the waters are kept clean. And so as part of that, we require stormwater permits as part when people make expansions, and when they pave, when they build rooftops and expand rooftops. So
These kind of ordinances, though, Robert, sorry, but this prohibits business growth.
And you're not talking just about detention, you're
but
talking about treating that stormwater too,
Well,
right?
it's not clear, though. Yeah, and it's not not clear.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
then it's,
I'm sorry to, can I point out that under the UDO, all commercial development has to have a site plan, and all site plans do require stormwater studies, and in certain cases, provision for the retention or the filtration of stormwater. If you look at this condition, it may not bite the permittee as badly as you think, because the last line of it says, take these precautions before the runoff is discharged from the property or into a water course. So it's when you are causing excess or additional runoff generation of stormwater because you have a rooftop or a paved parking lot, and the result is that the water is going to go on someone else's property or into a stream, then you have to do retention or filtration.
Do you have a creek on this property?
In the very back, that's 2,600 feet away from where the building is now. And
Okay.
it's like a low water area that's wet all the time. We would never build back there, could we?
It sounds like, too, Robert, and I'm sorry, Joe, do I have the floor? I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to steal it from Mr. Cronin. but
Oh, good.
Robert, are you saying that we put this language in because we have to comply with what the state is telling the county? That do we have to have this, or is it at our discretion?
well, aside from placing it as a condition of the conditional use permit, we still have to meet our own ordinances for stormwater. So there's already a stormwater requirement aside from this.
But the stormwater requirement, though, Robert's not agriculture, though. There's no stormwater requirements in agriculture, especially on 24 acres. And when you say, this is a field of grass, and it's well-groomed, and this is just, I think, this leaves too much. I'm not sure, and Robert's not your fault. I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, but it leaves way too much discretion in interpreting. It's going to be how you interpret it, how the next guy interprets it, and then this guy's wanting to grow his business, and then he's jammed up at community development because he's got to spend $10,000 on a water study to determine that everything's fine because it's going to run into the creek. I think that's way too complicated.
Well, and undoubtedly it is on this particular case, especially if, as you described it, it's surrounded by grass. What I'm trying to get at is, is looking at further back from 30,000 feet, is this the type of policy that we're going to be mandated to have because of the Federal Clean Water Act?
I think that, I don't know, you can ask Robert that, but I think that it's kind of on interpretation and discretion.
You know, what we could do is look at the implications of making it a standard conditions for all conditional use permits versus just leaving it as a standalone ordinance, stormwater ordinance. You know, we could.
I mean, if it's already covered in the building codes anyway, then
I guess
are we just putting it here to make people more aware of it?
Well, it's also, I guess, it's like Joanne, kind of what, you know, you get all these mandates constantly, and it's like how it does interfere, like the federal government interferes with a lot of things. But I mean, I guess this is something, maybe a bigger conversation, but I don't know when we started following everything. I'm a little confused on that because these water studies are extremely costly. If you're a small businessman, you really just can't do it. You just decide not to do the business, you know? And then you got to do a stormwater in the middle of a field.
I agree with you on that completely. But I also want to make sure that we're complying with, we don't put the county at risk for not complying with the Federal Clean Water Act.
I think what I'll do is I'll have the conversation with Harold and you guys will kind of see, like, let's talk about it a little bit, and I'll get with you. I mean, your business is fine and everything. I just think that it's too restrictive is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, in this case, it is a really long, narrow tract that's, I don't know how long it is, but it's
like 2,700 square feet, or 2,700 feet all the way to the back corner.
right. So it's super narrow. There's a
350
metal building towards the front, and so the whole, probably the back 80% is all just vacant land and will remain that way under this proposal.
Okay, thank you, guys. Any questions? Is that it? Thank you.
Thanks. I just had one comment I was going to make. A lot of this comes down from federal and state mandates, of course, that they want the county to enforce. And when, of course, they don't give us any money to do it. So it's unfunded mandates that we're having to deal with these type of situations. And I agree. I don't know that since this property is agricultural, that we need to have them put down this stormwater requirement on it.
Thank you. Is that it, David? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to 4211.
Bill number 4211, request by Craig Tchaikovsky, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute on-system bridge program agreement, federal project BRM-5414626 with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for allocation of funds for replacement of bridge over unnamed tributary to McCoy Creek on North Point Prairie Road.
Any questions or comments on 4211? Seeing none, moving to 4212.
Bill number 4212, request by John Greifsue, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the City of St. Peters for the Willott Road Bridge.
Any questions or comments? Moving on to 4213.
Bill number 4213, request by John Greifsue, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the City of O'Fallon to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion at the interchange of I-70 and Missouri Route M and K in an amount not to exceed $6,250,000.
Any questions or comment on 4213? Seeing none, 4214.
Bill number 4214, request by Simon Wong, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance repealing section 126.010 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, fees charged by the Department of Information Systems for services related to issuance of annual data licensings and enacting a new section 126.010 relating to such fees.
Any questions or comments on 4214? Seeing none, 4215.
Bill number 4215, request by Dave Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute form agreements with school districts in St. Charles County to provide for continued placement of school resource officers at schools in those districts.
Any questions or comments on 4215? Moving on to 4216.
Bill number 4216, request by Dave Todd and Bob Schnur, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Missouri Department of Transportation, Traffic, and Highway Safety Division for receipt of a grant of up to $55,000 to purchase a van and equipment for DWI checkpoint activities, and amending the 2015 budget adopted by ordinance 14-109 relating to receipt of said funds.
Any questions or comments on 4216? Moving on to 4217.
Bill number 4217, request by Dave Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive and chief of police to execute a memorandum of understanding with Midwest High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, HIDTA, to provide reimbursement to the county to support drug trafficking activities.
Any questions or comments on 4217?
I believe that Councilman Cronin is going to have an amendment to remove the word support and put in the word combat from that. We're not really getting reimbursement to support drug trafficking.
We're not Colorado, we're not supporting drug trafficking in this county.
Send me an email I saw this afternoon, so.
Does it say that in
I
there?
believe that's the councilman's amendment, is it not, Councilman?
And I caught this about 11:30 last night when I was reading.
We really do oppose drug trafficking.
You're no fun at all down there, Joe, come on.
Yeah, I'll make an amendment to have Harold change the language to something more appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, 4218.
Do we need a second on that motion?
You do.
Oh, is there a second?
Second. Not a roll call, or just a...
Second? Who, you got a second?
I got a
All
second.
those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. 4218.
Bill number 4218, request by Betty Ann Kramer, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance enacting section 250.013 and 250.015, and amending sections 250.020, 250.030, 250.040, 250.050, 250.060, 250.100, 250.220, 250.250, 250.380, 250.400, 250.445, 250.450, 250.460, and 250.500, ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO relating to county park regulations.
Any questions or comments?
Got a quick one, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed, it's a minor thing, but somewhere in here, and I was trying to page through it again, but I couldn't find it. There's a requirement to reserve any of the park facilities that you have to be 21. Age of majority in Missouri is 18, and we just sent off a friend of my daughter's to join the military. He's out, fighting for us. The kid's 20 years old, and it just seems a little ironic that he couldn't reserve a pavilion in one of our parks. But he's capable of driving a tank across the.
But he can't buy liquor.
Well, we're not selling.
No,
we're not
I
selling
know.
liquor here either.
I know. Actually, this question arose, I think, from the very beginning of the park system and when the ordinances were first put in. And so with that, though, I'm going to defer both of these gentlemen, Dennis Evans of our park staff, and of course, Greg Dorman. They have worked some months on these ordinances as far as updating, researching, doing comparisons with other governmental entities as well as private. So they have been immersed in these things for some months. So I'm going to step aside and let you address that.
From my perspective, I only reviewed the ordinances from the department's perspective. I wasn't questioning something that was already set in the ordinances in that regard. I was looking at business practices and fees and other items
so from a
like
legal
that.
standpoint,
Right.
there's nothing that says they have to be 21.
What's that?
They could be under 21 if to rent a pavilion.
Well, the ordinance, I believe, says 21
You have to be
currently.
21.
And I'm just saying that that wasn't part of the scope I was looking at to
Gotcha.
change something like that.
Legal, is there any
Greg,
issue?
from a legal side?
No, there's no legal requirement. It's a policy choice, just like rental car companies. Others
Sounds like
set
it's your
high
choice
rate
then.
limits.
Councilman Hughes, It was original to the ordinance. Do you want to make an
Right.
amendment to move it to 18?
I'll take input before I make that motion, but
What is your motion on what now?
It's on page 9. In order to reserve park facilities or equipment, right now we require, and have had since the beginning of the park ordinances, we require that those people be 21 years of age or older.
You want to change that, Mike?
I would change it to 18.
Is there a second? Is there a second? I mean, can I second?
I'll make a motion to change it to 18.
Second, can I second it as a chairman?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, Steve, but.
Yeah, is there a deposit that has to be put down?
Only with the lodge or the conference center, but not for camper cabins, things like that.
Okay, so
Actually,
if somebody reserves one and then doesn't show up,
Well, we take the payment at the time of the reservation if they've reserved it for picnic shelters
For the cabins.
and cabins, yes.
Can you
okay,
make
so
it-
they have to pay at the time that they.
Correct.
Okay, so it doesn't, it's not a question of who, of going after the money later. It's a pay from the
Upfront.
upfront.
Pay
Okay,
upfront.
good, thank you.
Section G of that same portion of the ordinance, it says anything you charge for a reservation, you refund that person and the debtors and the if we cancel it, they need to pay
I have a question.
Okay, so, hold on a second. Is there still a motion on the floor? We're going to have a conversation on it, or what are we doing?
I'll second Mike's motion.
Well, hold on one second, though, before we, 18, if you're in the military and stuff, I do agree that you're probably more
You
responsible.
can get
and-
married when you're 18.
Right, however, there are a lot of really rascal 18-year-olds, too. I can see a lot of beer parties down there at Brunswick Park and the Klondike Park, and that's what I'm starting to think about, you
I
know?
can point out several 30-year-olds, too.
Can you legally, 18 years old with a military ID, or can you do anything like that, or is that discrimination?
I don't think that that's impermissible distinction, that's an impermissible distinction to draw.
Yeah, okay, I agree, all right.
Have you had any trouble with kids, 20-somethings at the park facilities?
We've had a few incidents of, and it was parties that would occur with say, a cabin rental, and, but that's not to say that an adult couldn't make the reservation and then just the kids show up.
All those
But
fine,
we've had a few.
all those fine facilities weren't available when I was growing up in this county, but I had some really good parties at them if you had them. So that's my only concern was, you guys have spent a lot of money and a lot of time making some really nice facilities. Are we taking a risk of having kids party them up and tear them up? That'd be my only concern. And I guess you have that with anything. They can tear it up at 21 probably as well as they can tear it up at 18.
Do you want to talk, you want to think
At
about
21,
that?
they can have liquor, at 18, they can't. So
Yeah,
I would
that's
argue
the
that
point.
there's more likely to get tore up at 21 than there is at 18.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Steve.
you know, a lot of those rascally 18-year-olds have fake IDs anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, I don't care one way or the other. but
I'm
I-
trying to figure out how to put rascally 18-year-olds in the ordinance. I don't know.
Do you want to, this is kind of a big bill, do you want to, before we just do one item at a time, Mike, you want to just look at it and then make some other recommendations? Because I got a lot of questions, too. I mean, we could have.
I read it earlier, but that was the one that jumped out at me the most.
Well, so is your motion on the floor, or do you want to withdraw it and continue?
I would-
You want a
Yeah,
motion?
Motion's been made and
Seconded by
seconded.
Dave, okay, so all in favor by adding it to 18, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, John, one opposition, the amendment does pass. I have a question. You have in here about, what are these, the way you're doing this is these are changes, so you're just doing, the purpose of chapter following items shall be defined as airborne vehicles, okay? Helicopters, airplanes. You have hang gliders. Are you saying it says kits, or is that supposed to be, is it kites?
Are you in the,
Is it a
which,
misprint?
where are you at on the,
On section 2,
page 2 under the definitions?
yeah,
Yeah, those are all existing definitions.
but is it kits or kites? Did you forget the E?
Kits.
Kits.
It's kit is the,
You can build an airplane from a kit.
Okay, so are you saying, does it go on, these are just definitions of what an airborne vehicle is?
Yes.
Yeah, and if it's in the definition section, yes.
You're looking at page 2 under the definition of airborne
Yeah,
vehicle.
me and Dave couldn't figure out if it was we didn't know if it was a misprint because it says kit twice.
no, that was the ordinance that was passed back
Originally.
sometime.
98.
It's a kit or a self-made aircraft, so it's like an ultralight aircraft that you can buy a kit and build it yourself, like an airborne lawnmower.
Model airplanes too.
Okay.
That's what they sound like. It's regulated by the FAA.
You need to get out to Smart Field, Harold.
Who says we're not?
Okay, so Betty, what I'm trying to understand though, this is mostly, from what I see, is you got definitions, just clarifying the definitions. Has there been any significant or any changes to, besides the amendment we just made, to the park rules? Can you tell me where are those at?
Do you have the
Is there changes in park rules?
Joe, if I can suggest,
Yes.
why don't we get a memo that just lays this all out for us?
Yeah, I mean, this is complicated
What the
because
changes really are.
It refers to all these sections, and we don't know what the sections are. We don't have, I mean,
I truly hate it when we get it this way, because it's hard, it's
Okay.
hard for us to follow. What are we changing? And that's the real crux of it here is what's, all of this is,
Yeah, but if it's-
with all the definitions and everything, just tell me, what was it, what it's
The
gonna
main
be?
changes, a lot of the changes were from the county counselor's office, just cleaning up language and things like that in the definitions section.
Okay, so I got a request before we vote on
Yeah.
this again. Break
We'll
it
have it
down,
to you
give
by
me a
Friday,
memo that
Councilman.
has the changes.
We'll have it to you by Friday.
That'd be great.
yeah.
I
'cause
don't,
it
I don't have
refers-
time to read 20 pages looking
It
for
refers to the
strikeouts.
sections, and we don't know what the sections are because we don't have the sections.
No, it did.
You do
That
have
one
the
should
sections
have.
There,
all
there.
laid forth before you, that's the sections that are bold and stricken. If we open that section, we have to produce it for you, so it's there before you.
Actually, that's a requirement of the charter to produce the section in its entirety if we touch it with an amendment.
But how is it changing in that section? That's-
If it's
This is
added
hard to
wordage,
understand what I'm saying.
if it's added, it's
Do you
in
not have
bold.
the bold and strikes?
Okay.
Strike through is to remove it, bold is something that's getting added. If
Okay.
it's in normal type, like the rest of the text, it's not being changed.
We'll still have a memo for you. by
Just
Friday.
give us a memo that says what the change is, what was it, what is it, and why.
Gotcha.
Okay, I got it. Okay, any questions for the Parks Department?
I just have one comment for what it's worth. You might as well start thinking about it. This also prohibits any type of hunting, okay? And if you look at any other park around here, they all have a hell of a problem with overpopulation of deer and sometimes geese. So I know our parks is pretty new and we don't have that issue yet. But if I go down to Jefferson Barracks Cemetery quite a bit and they got a hell of a problem with deer down there. So it's coming. You might as well start the planning for it.
Well, in the original ordinances that were passed regarding hunting in the county parks, yes, it does say that it's not allowed except with the written authorization of the board.
Okay.
And that was put in specifically to address any sort of animal management that needs to take place.
There you go.
But Betty, I called you earlier this year and asked you that specific question because some of the landowners in the area wanted to hunt on the parks out there in southwest St. Charles County because of the deer population, and you told me that we don't allow that.
We don't allow it, Joe. I
Well-
mean, you have to have,
But without your you just said without your authorization.
Right.
So how does the county council, I mean, game management is part of conservation. And by not bow hunting, I'm not speaking of rifles, I'm speaking of strictly of bow hunting. To me, that's proper conservation management. When you have
Well-
2,000 acres in southwest St. Charles County and no one's bow hunting, I can think that creates somewhat of a problem. Because I hit 4 deer, I've hit 4 deer in a year, and it's every $4,000 every time.
sure. But I'm going to say a couple caveats there. Obviously, the Conservation Department down in that part of the county has like, what, 8,000 acres for hunts?
17,000
Okay.
with pellet push and oil.
Part of the county for managed hunts. I've been involved with managed hunts at Jackson County for many years. We started them there. We were the first parks department in the state to do that. It's not something to be taken just lightly. We need to address it in terms of assessing the need. If, in that case, we had aerial counts done, we kept stats on how many accidents occurred right at the park areas. We kept stats on how many local residents had damage done from deer. We had, in an aerial count, we were having 100 deer per square mile. That's a lot of deer. So in concert with the Missouri Department of Conservation, we started managed hunts. The idea of having them in public parks typically can be an interesting issue because people do view public parks that are recreation areas for kids and such. They view it differently than conservation management areas like bush wildlife, for example. So I'm just suggesting that before we just allow people to come in and hunt, we need to have a good plan in place, and we need to have the rationale of why we're doing that as well. It's a different environment in terms of the park users versus users of, say, bush wildlife.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll revisit that deer hunting one again. No.
You're not going to get a permit, Joe.
No, I don't know if I may agree with you, I don't know.
Sounds like you're eliminating the deer population anyway with your truck.
Actually, you know, our residents around the parks, I don't worry about them getting their deer or not. They usually have a deer stand pretty close to the edge of their property.
No, I know,
So-
it's not,
Yeah.
I was just wondering, that's all.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We'll have
Okay.
that information to you then, sir.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very much. That concludes bills for introduction. Are there any table bills to be removed from the table? Seeing none, announcements and, anybody have any announcements? I do have one comment that needs to be addressed. I sent everybody, I sent Mayor Pagano and the City of St. Peters a letter. You all have a copy of it. We are talking about having a work session on the next meeting, the 27th, I believe it is. And if you see the response, there is no specific details to the project at this time. It does not exist. Are we, it's a council's wishes, are we going to continue to have a meeting on no specifics and just hypothetical situation? Or are we going to, what do you guys want to do?
I'd like to hear what they have to say myself.
Dave?
Yes, I would like to hear what they have to say. But they do have, I know they have several developers that have approached them. So I don't know, I would think they would want to see if there's any opportunity that we would even consider before people start spending money to put together a proposal as part of a site plan and development plan. So I'd like to hear what they have to say, and I'm aware of a couple of the conversations of developers that are interested. So I'd like to hear what they got to say.
Well, I mean, it's, I asked the administration to develop some cost scenarios, and talking with Mr. Holman, it's pretty difficult to run cost analysis off a hypothetical and what if this or what if that. So how are we going to have that? I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Dave. It's just going to be, how do we have this conversation when we don't even know what we're talking about?
Well, again, we provided some information based upon my initial discussion with them. They called it a Streets of St. Charles type project. And we gave them the benefit of the doubt that they could recreate that same project in the 370, and then did a run on what it would mean to the school districts based upon that very optimistic projection. So, until you know exactly what they want to do, how many houses, how much retail, how whatever, you're not really going to know what impact for sure it would have. So
I still think we should meet with them and talk about, general guidelines of what we might be, not coming out and saying, yes, we're going to agree to this project, because we don't know what the project is. But I'd like to hear at least what they're talking about there, and from their perspective, why they think that this would be a good idea.
Okay, at your wishes, we'll have the work session on the 27th. Send them a letter.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Steve.
I know we talked about it, but I haven't seen the letter. Do they say which?
You guys got it. Did you send it to them?
Do they say which school district it's going to be in?
They say something about Fort Zumwalt. What did it say, Donna?
Yeah, so is that where it's going to be? Are they talking about Fort Zumwalt? Are they talking about St. Charles, or either? Or they don't know. They don't even know which district. Okay.
Well, the fire district should be, the fire districts, library district, we'll send out letters to all of them. And then I don't know how Bob can even, or Scott, or who would even run the numbers of a hypothetical scenario, so we know.
Well, Bob could do it, but until he knows exactly what is going to be built and how much it would cost and what the possible assessed valuation would be, he wouldn't be able to give us any kind of solid numbers.
And who will be at this meeting? Will there be somebody, will St. Peter's be representing themselves?
I would assume, but why not put the onus on the political jurisdictions to figure out the financial impact to them, okay? Why not let St. Charles School District or Fort Zumwalt School District or any of those political entities figure out the tax liabilities to them and put the onus on them instead of putting the onus on Mr. Schnurr?
Well,
That's
first of
my
all,
point.
because the school districts won't have any decision-making in this whole process.
Well, I think
we're going to put the burden on them, is what we're going to do.
What I'm saying is, yes, I think I put the burden on the school districts to come up with the numbers in that county, myself.
I don't think there's any numbers to come up with.
That's a problem.
Well, they can figure out if it's a
there's no
$30 million
project yet.
development, what the cost is going to be.
Okay, well, we'll get that's what I'm saying, though. It's just like, what if this or what if that, and that's, but we'll have the meeting. We'll invite all the taxing entities, and administration will be here, and Harold, and what time do you got, how much time,
They
Joe?
can't tell the developers to come with something.
An hour, 5:30, 6?
I think we were looking at 6 o'clock.
Is that gonna be enough time?
Yes. 6 o'clock.
Okay, 6 o'clock to 6:50. Is that the only thing on the work session of any other items that we wanted to discuss? And
It's the only thing at this point.
Okay.
There's no other items.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody on any other issues? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.